Hi, my name is Jamie Lynch, and you are listening to Eating Habits, my podcast about everything restaurants. I will explore the human element of the hospitality business, and I'll talk to the who's who in restaurants, explore their stories, and hear what's on their minds in the ever-changing landscape of the food and beverage industry. Today, I had the pleasure to speak with Helen Schwab. Helen was the anonymous food critic for the Charlotte Observer in Charlotte, North Carolina for many, many years. I never knew as a chef what Helen looked like or when she was going to come in and critique my restaurants. And she has reviewed every chef and restaurant worth its salt in Charlotte, North Carolina, and some that weren't. So let's start off. Why don't you tell me a little bit about how you came to be the restaurant critic for Charlotte Observer?
Sure.
And you did that for, like 30 years or something, right?
That was 88 to about 2017.
Mm-hmm.
But when I started, I actually was filling in for the previous critic who had gone on sabbatical. And I said, I can do this for a few weeks. Sure, no problem. We wanted to have a presence. And at that point, it was every other week, one place, you went twice. Is that right? Yeah, every other week.
Mm-hmm.
Every other week, maybe every 3 weeks. And when she came back into the office, this is Danny Powell, who was marvelous. She came back to the office and she said, I had such a great time eating without writing down in a little notebook what the lighting was like that I would like to never do this again.
That's
I said,
awesome.
Okay, well, let's see. Let me think about that. And I was editing at that time. And
so she wanted
working
out.
Some design. She was ready to be done. She had done it for, I should have looked this up. I don't remember. Maybe 10 years. She had done it for a while.
Okay.
And she was ready to stop doing it.
Sure.
And a brilliant writer, poet. She does a lot and has continued to do a lot. And I said, well, I can do it. I think I can keep doing it for a little while. And 88 I got pregnant in 89. And so I did it for a while. I really liked it. I started, researching like crazy and just trying to do a lot more backgrounding of myself because I did not have, I had waited tables and I had dated cooks, but I did not have what I thought would be helpful to people, to readers. So started doing a lot of that and then got pregnant and said, pitched to the Observer, I'd like to keep doing just this. I want to take off the rest of it and I want to keep doing this. What do you think? And they said, great, we love it. And we'll do it more often. We'd like to do it more often. So did that for the next, 30 years.
Yeah.
And it would go up and down. It was at its most half-time. It was never full-time.
Right.
Which, could it be a full-time job? Absolutely, without question. It could be several people's jobs. Given the newsroom at that time, which was somewhere around like 300 people, 280, 290. Was it an appropriate breakdown? Yeah, it probably was. For Charlotte, Charlotte's not Charleston. It did not at that time have any kind of range at all.
Right.
So, and I should backtrack and not say not any kind of range at all. Please don't DM me. There was some range, but there was certainly not anything. I remember writing about the first Thai restaurant to come into Charlotte. So that happened on my watch. The first everything. Not the first Italian restaurant run by Greeks. That did not happen on my watch. But
that's funny. When was that?
Wonderful stuff. That was like in 18. No, that's been true for, how old's the Open Kitchen now? That was not the first. The Open Kitchen was not the first. And it's great food. It's just not, technically Italian food.
Right.
And certainly no regional Italian food. But I would go there and have chicken livers and baklava any day of the week.
Right. Yeah. Which are not traditionally Italian.
There's just not happening.
Right.
We would get pizza and fries from the Open Kitchen on a late night in the sports desk. I first came to the Observer in the sports department. So
so sports was your way into the Observer.
Yeah. My way in was a professor at school called and said, are you ready to get a real job? And I was teaching horseback riding and working at a 7-Eleven waiting to be robbed in Maryland. And I said, I guess, yeah, I'll go work.
That's hilarious. Wow. Okay.
Pickled pig's feet.
So did you study journalism and okay, so you went to Northwestern, right? Very cool. And then so you started in sports and then you kind of took over for
I was in sports and then I went to Metro and then I went to features. So I've worked in, I had worked in every department by then and loved the diversity of that experience.
So did you feel that you had let me figure out how to phrase it. So
was I qualified? In no way was I qualified.
So that brings up an interesting question because one of the topics I want to get into is this. I'm calling it critique culture, right?
Yep.
It's where Yelp, all these review sites, people are just so empowered by social media and all these sites to be a critic.
So blame Zagat for that.
What is?
Zagat.
Okay.
Blame Zagat.
Yeah, right.
Which was the first mainstream, you can say anything you want and we'll put it in our book.
Yep.
And the more entertainingly trashy you are, the more likely your quote will get into the book.
And so that's the thing.
So that, there is a strain of criticism. So I always like to pause and say criticism is not being critical as in not being negative. It is assessing things. To critique is to assess, not to bitch at. Right?
Yes.
Or hang people out to dry. And I think that definition mostly misses people. They just kind of sleep on that part. So to assess, you do need context. You need experience. Now, I am someone who would argue that the goal of restaurant criticism in a mainstream publication or online entity medium is to help the reader decide if they would like a place and how to spend their money.
Yep.
So I believe that my job was never Tom Colicchio's job of, did you screw this up? This is what you should have done.
Right.
Nor is it Padma's job, which I'm not always entirely sure what that is, but it was not that. It was to bridge the restaurant, the dining experience of the common person with what chefs and cooks and small mom and pop owners wanted to put on the plate.
Yep.
And can you help people see that? And can you tell them, is this traditional? Is it authentic? Is a word I despise. Ever since the woman called me up and railed for 30 minutes about a pozole her mom made, never had hominy in it, ever. And the very next call was like, if it doesn't have hominy in it, it's not pozole. And
right.
I'm like, okay, so clearly authentic is not, and I'm doing air quotes around authentic. That's not a word I ever want to use again.
Right.
Traditional is okay. Regional, if you can define the region, and that just takes a lot of work.
Yep.
So I believed and believe that I was qualified by research and experience, but was not. I mean, I cook a lot, but I would never pretend that I could run a restaurant. I mean, ever.
Sure.
And I think for the most part, there are a few people who have been in the food world who are good critics, not a whole lot of them, because it gets too technical.
Right.
It gets too, there are people who are really, really good at it.
Sure.
But that's a really small segment of folks who can bridge that.
I think that's one thing that Tom's really good at, Tom Colicchio, is like, so Tom is the master of criticism, okay? The beauty about Tom is experiencing him twice on Top Chef, is that he knows his stuff, right? He can discern a sauce, a dish, without having been there to see it.
Yes.
He may not be able to pinpoint exactly what happened, but he'll be able to say to you, hey, chef, what happened with the mushrooms?
Right.
And you're like,
the mussels, if you take them out of that cream, they're going to dry out.
Yeah.
And then,
all of this. And so, so he's an expert.
Cool.
But you mentioned
helping a diner know whether they'll like it or not.
Right.
I think that's the piece that's missing.
Yeah. And so, and that brings up another point too, is do you think that there's a demand for that still? We don't have it in Charlotte now. You haven't been doing it since 2016, right?
A couple in 17.
Okay. So it's been a hot
honestly,
minute. And so now, the reason I'm getting to this is I do value that perspective of like you have somebody who is consistent
That's
in
huge.
their criticism and in their ideas and whatever, whether you agree or not.
Exactly.
Right. You
exactly.
can,
Which is also a point people
right.
miss.
And as a chef, I value that. Right. It's like I know from reading your reviews and the places that you go, the things you like and you don't, I can do my own homework and say, okay, I can, get through this review and decide what's important to me, what I think I need to focus on and what I don't, right?
Exactly.
And with this critique culture thing, it's just everybody's whim. I mean, people hit us up and they're like, 1 star, the sauce was broken and it ruined my day, right? I'm like, oh, really? My sauce ruined your day.
Yes.
Well, I'm sorry for you. Get over yourself,
It's a
right?
small life.
Yeah, exactly.
Small,
If that's
sad
what
life.
did it,
Right.
I apologize.
Well, but the very next person will say the sauce was way too,
Yeah.
I mean, the diametrically opposed criticism.
Right.
And I think that is, that's when you get the criticism. So for Yelp, it skews toward people who are mad, for sure, for sure. People who don't know what they're talking about, and people who want to take it out. My absolutely favorite Yelp review ever was the person who said, it was really good, but they didn't comp it, so I'm going to not give them any stars. It's like, and they should have known. I'm a big influencer. I thought, okay,
Oh, wow.
that's clearly, so you liked it, and yet because they didn't make it free, they suck at their job, so, we need to ding them, and that's going to be in the averages. I'm just not sure. That's when there is criticism. The fact that it's not consistent helps no one. At least Yelp identifies the person, and so you can look in their
History
archive, their history, and compare your experience with theirs. But typically those people don't write. You've got a few that write dozens and dozens, and those tend to be people who are very angry,
right,
and have very small bandwidths on what is going to ruin their day. But you'll get somebody who you feel like, oh, I'm simpatico because I felt that way about that restaurant, and then they haven't reviewed anywhere else. And so what are you to do with that? You
right,
have nowhere to go.
Totally.
So I think you're right that you need the consistency. You need to be able to, as a diner, again, you need to be able to align your view, whether you agree or not, you can align with someone who is consistent. And you can know if they think nothing is ever spicy enough, and then something is spicy, I'm going to avoid that if you are spice averse.
Yep.
And that just doesn't exist.
Yeah.
The thing that's more pressing to me, and I think more disastrous for the food scene, is that influencers have skewed it so heavily to visual only. Mm-hmm. So the consumption of news about restaurants is how did it look on the plate?
Totally.
And I actually watched someone post 5 pictures from obviously a media opening. So everything is exactly the way you're never going to see it
right,
if you actually order it.
It's just this one time.
Just this one time, and it looks exactly the way we want it to. And another influencer said, oh, man, that restaurant killed it. And I thought, did they? How would you have any idea? People look at the pictures and think they know. Right. And Top Chef's a little bit of the problem there because...
Ooh, let's talk about that.
They made it visual. They made... I'm sure that there are thousands of people in America who feel like they know what Tom Colicchio knows now.
So I would argue that no dishes that I prepared on Top Chef looked the way I intended them to.
I believe that.
In my head.
I believe that. How could they? What an insane...
Yeah.
And I love Top Chef.
Yeah.
I just rewatched some of it. And... just insane.
Yeah.
This last one where it's like everybody scurries to the no. What world is that?
It's crazy. It's
That's
just
absurd.
Yeah, it's and a lot of things that I tell people, and the funny thing about, maybe not the funny thing, I guess the kudos to them. Top Chef is real. Like there's no takes. There's no like let's do this again.
I believe that.
It's very like their production team blows my mind. Like the way they're able to execute these challenges and shows and put it all together is mind-boggling because
absolutely no, and it's entertaining, and they do what they do for a reason. I get that. That I'm trying to count the number of seasons that I watched where I felt like, oh, that person deserved to go home right now. No, hardly ever. Yeah, hardly ever. Somebody's made 3 straight dishes that knocked it out of the park, and that here's my hot take.
Okay.
I absolutely would have done exactly what you did on the immunity.
Thank you. Yeah.
I wouldn't have had the presence of mind to think through, okay, wait, if I get the chicken and the peanut butter and I screwed up, someone on my team other than me is going to go home.
Right.
I would not have thought that through, and then I would have been standing where you were and done
Yeah.
exactly. That was the right thing to do. That was the honorable thing to do.
Right.
And I know you got trashed for it.
I got trashed.
Ridiculous.
So I get like totally 50-50 on it, right? So 50% of the people get
Okay.
trashed, and then
I did
50%
not
of the people are
realize.
saying, hey, good on you for doing the right thing. My deal that I tell everybody, though, is that I didn't give up. I told them, I said, hey,
absolutely
if you guys think my dish was that, because I was in the room. I was smelling the scallops that Casey put up that were like not fresh and
not
serving
okay.
raw. Like I saw all that stuff, and a lot of viewers didn't. I mean, there were like I would never have served scallops that were not fresh, that were like borderline on the edge, raw. Okay,
It's insane.
and so so there was some inside stuff there that like some scandalous, some facts about it, but
it misses the moral high ground, which is doesn't matter if you gave up or not. You were looking at it's not fair if I cook this dish for one of my teammates to go home. That is the moral high ground by definition. And the notion that people could have seen it as anything but that is just really disturbing.
And I felt that based on the feedback that I received during that episode, which like it was just for people that didn't see it. It was a big party, like a cocktail party, and there was like 200 people walking around to the different things, and I got the peanut butter and chicken, right? So I did this satay thing. Not my best work, for sure, but it wasn't terrible. I did have some technical issues with the chicken, like sticking on the grill and stuff like that.
Grill's not going to work.
But the feedback that I was getting from the guests that were walking around was that it was very good. People were coming back for more. Yeah. So I was like, okay, it's not that bad, right? Yep. Well, of course, Padma trashed it, totally went to town. And so my deal was that putting us at the bottom, like you said, I had an issue with the setup, right? It was like, okay, cool. Exactly. Well, Jamie's got immunity, so let's send one of these guys, right? Yeah. And it was like, and my dish, in my opinion, was not the worst dish of the day.
Right.
And that team was not on the bottom.
Right.
So, that was kind of like, I'm not going to allow that to happen.
Yeah, disaggregate these teams and send the worst dish home. I mean, team challenges are just bullshit.
Yeah,
anyway.
That's totally.
Just so every team assignment in high school, it's the exact same thing. The one guy who doesn't do anything and always seems to skate through, it's just the same. So anyway, I think Top Chef, I do hold Top Chef responsible in a large, and the Food Network in general.
For popularizing.
For deifying chefs, for one thing, for making kids. I remember having a really early conversation when Johnson & Wales came to town with a chef who said, kids graduate high school and they think they're going to have their show. Totally. And they come to cooking school to get their show. Yeah. Not to learn to cook.
They're coming out of Johnson & Wales thinking they're going to get
a show. And so that ruined it from the service standpoint, and TV ruined it from the diner standpoint, because people think they can look at something and know what's wrong with it, or know how it's going to taste, or know anything at all, except that that's what it looks like. Right. That's I think that was a perfect segue into Instagram influencers, which is how Charlotte gets most of its restaurant news now.
Totally. And I wanted to get into that a little bit. Do you think that this, this obsession with chefs, because of the popularity of like Top Chef and Chopped and like all those kind of Food Network type things, is part of the reason that influencers, I'm air quoting influencers, are so attracted to criticizing restaurants and chefs? Do you think because people, do you think it has to do with the popularity of like those shows, and that it being kind of like it's a cultural thing now. People watch all these like cooking shows, and there's like a million of them. I mean, there's shows out there I don't even know.
Yeah. I will say that in my, and I don't look closely anymore because it's too upsetting. It's too upsetting to look at stuff. On Instagram specifically, my sense is not that people are trashing much. I mean, you get the occasional thing. They're just posting and saying, had this last night. Amazing. Yeah. the notion that amazing should ever be used, for one thing, but also that there is any information to be gleaned from that other than what Charlotte diners have always been accused of, which is to be very trendy and for everyone to run in crowds to the next new thing. That just exacerbates this.
Totally.
That all that picture tells you is that somebody got to go to a media event and is posting live out of that event. And that's enough for many, many restaurant owners to pay for, which, I mean, is my other quibble. Hardly anyone will put sponsor or ad, whatever, which is actually, legally required.
Is it?
If you're getting paid for posts, you need to post that. So it just encourages people to scurry from one place to the next, to not establish any kind of relationship with a restaurant, to not try it more than once, to not to take the word of others, and if it doesn't look the way it did, it encourages portion size, an emphasis on portion size. That's bullshit. It encourages, I actually read an actual review in a magazine that talked about the perfect mimosa and the size of it and nothing else at all, just how big it was. I'm like, I'm
not sure if that's part of the that's funny.
So I think that by definition, the visual assessment of food is hugely flawed, and that is the only thing that people have. So there's little captioning. When there is captioning, it tends to be, the complaints tend to be, I didn't get served right away, or it was too small, or it was too expensive. And that is just such an nth of the information that somebody who cares about food wants or needs to make a good decision. The very, very worst part is if somebody posts a picture of sushi and it's pretty and they say amazing and it's actually terrible and somebody goes, they then think they don't like sushi.
Right. Oh, that's a good point.
And where that screws it up is for everyone else trying to put sushi on the menu, and I use sushi in general, but uni, you have one bad piece of uni, no one's ever going to order it again.
Yeah.
So you've just taken it off the menus.
Oysters is a great one, because you get a bad oyster, you're like, ooh, I hate oysters.
I hate oysters. Well, you've screwed it up for everybody. Because in my experience over decades, chefs start taking that stuff off because it doesn't sell. So ain't nobody getting sweetbreads anymore because people went, ugh, and that's tragic.
Yeah,
that is tragic.
Interesting. That's an interesting point.
We used to laugh that if a non-American cuisine that was not popular in Charlotte or was not available in Charlotte opened, get there in the first month before they take all the good stuff off the menu because they can't sell it.
Yeah, and they Americanize it and do the whole sweet sauces and the
my
whatever.
Dear God.
I hate that.
Or they take, or things just disappear. And
they just don't do them because they can't sell it.
Beautiful little Turkish place that just fewer and fewer things.
We've done that at Five Church.
Sure.
Our flagship, we don't serve foie gras. I had foie gras on the menu for years when we first opened, and I got to the point where we just couldn't sell it. Our clientele, and the people that were dining there, they weren't familiar with foie gras. They were not well traveled. They were,
Well, let's talk about the quality of South Park restaurants in general. Let's talk about tipping in Ballantyne too. But let's get it all.
Let's do it. Come on, Helen. What else do you want to talk about?
You were at table, right?
Yeah.
Some lively conversations about how people's expectations on price, people's expectations on tipping that's what's wrong with the restaurant industry. It's not. Charlotte's been on the cusp, using the air quotes, of just a breakout food scene for 25 freaking years.
When are you either going to break out or what's going to happen here?
It's not about the chefs in the restaurant.
It's definitely not.
It's about diners.
Yes, I agree. What do you think that's about? The Charlotte food scene is strong right now. We have a lot of talented people. We have way more chef partnered restaurants, kind of where chefs are involved in the ownership structure, which makes it chef driven, in my opinion. You have a chef who's helping to call the shots. And so it's not a lack of having options or having talent. Is it the dining public? Is it is it a trend? Is it, what do people want? Do you have any thoughts on all that? Like, I have strong feelings about it because I'm a chef.
Yep.
And they change. So what I wanted 10 years ago when we opened Five Church
Sure.
was to be the best, to do something that nobody else was doing, to cut, do all that, which I think we did. Mm-hmm. Five Church is still going strong, and it will continue. I mean, we've opened multiple in other cities, and it's a proven thing now.
And what is the thing that is Five Church? What is that thing?
It is a modern American, I would say, funky, eclectic restaurant that's not fine dining.
And how often does the menu change, and what percentage of it changes?
It changes probably every 4 months, like once a quarter. As it kind of follows the seasonality of stuff. It's not rigid.
And when you change it, you change 30% of the menu?
I would say, yeah, that's probably about right.
And so that other
maybe 40%.
I had to do the math. 60, 70% are stand-up dishes all year long.
Yes.
And what percentage of your sales is that?
That's a good question. I would say, I'll tell you right now that the filet mignon on all of my menus is probably the number one seller.
Sure.
Right? Or the steak, whatever the steak option is, right?
So why does Charlotte have 17 steak restaurants? I think that was at its peak. It was 17 steak restaurants.
Yep.
In town.
Unbelievable.
That's why.
Yep.
Because that's what people buy.
Right.
And it is certainly partly travel. It is certainly partly exposure. It is certainly partly we don't have a self-regulating dining scene in the way that Charleston does or New York City does. That self-regulates. People just don't go and you die.
Yeah. People walk. People vote with their dollars or with their feet.
They do, and they do that here too. But they do it to. Again, I remember. I'm trying to think how long ago this was. There was a little Italian place that made New York style pizzas called Carlo's, and I remember the owner saying, "I'm in this to make a living, not a killing." And it was just a great quote. It flew in the face of literally everyone at that time could not wait to get their second restaurant open, just could not wait. Like, we've been open 3 months over here and I can't wait to open 6 more.
Right.
And what is it? I think the average is 5 or 6% profit margin now. Is that true of you guys? Yours is higher. Right?
Ours is higher than that.
How much higher?
We're usually around 10 as an average,
okay.
but we spike higher than that too.
Yeah.
But 10 is our happy spot.
So that's just not a big profit margin.
No.
And so it doesn't.
And that's a good profit margin. It's not big.
An exceptional profit margin.
And it's not big.
And that does not reward risk. Mm-mm. So if you want that, you're not going to risk.
Correct.
So that's what happens.
Mm-hmm.
People don't demand service that is of the quality that you will often find elsewhere. And when I say demand, I don't mean leave the restaurant and write a shitty Yelp review.
Right.
I mean, do you know?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how it should be? Do you
know the differences between fine dining and casual dining? Do you know the difference between upscale and fine dining?
Right. And if you think that your service staff does not know from table to table who knows and who doesn't know, of course they know.
Right.
And who are they busting it for? They're busting it for the people who know the difference, right? So it's I think what has been frustrating to me is that Charlotte continued to be a trend-driven, popularity-driven place, even when we had loads of talent. We've had loads of talent in other years.
Totally.
We've had years where we had an exceptional lineup of places that scrimped along because people didn't see the difference between McCormick and Schmick and X. I can't think contemporaneously over decades, but they didn't. And I shouldn't say they couldn't tell the difference. The difference did not matter enough to them to patronize one and not the other. You can't. Part of that is having people write about it and sharing information about it. Part of it is how badly does the restaurant want to make that money? Part of it is, I think, I mean, I think that is a place where Top Chef and the Food Network have broadened people's awareness of, Vietnamese food and Laotian food in ways that has been great and valuable. It's just we don't have the critical mass, I guess, to keep that going.
Right.
The idea that we're going to open another food hall, like spitting distance from the first food hall.
Right. How's the first food hall doing? Is it?
It's a good question.
Yeah,
I mean, right now, who can tell anything about
right.
how
It's
anybody's
not a
doing,
great
right?
time to judge, but is that because that's the trendy thing, right? That's what the big cities are doing, so we need to have it in Charlotte, right?
And I think that's certainly part of it. I think also a huge part of our dining scene is driven by young people with money, just like our apartment booms are driven by that. That does not tend to be. I remember when Johnson & Wales was coming here, people said, "Oh my God, this is great because this means we're going to have a great restaurant scene." I was like, "What about line cooks do you not understand?"
Yeah,
Like how that's. And I remember, I think it was. Well, I don't want to say who it was. A chef told me, what this means is that I'm going to have more option to pay less to people who want to work in my restaurant.
Yep.
And he was not excited about that. He was just saying, here's a fact.
Yeah.
And I think people in general thought, oh my God, we're going to have these young chefs come out and they're not opening here, honey.
No,
that is not where they're going to go.
That's right.
That is not their first stop. And there have been some.
Yep.
But people have to want it more than they want it.
Right. So you brought up an interesting point about the dining public, right? In Charlotte, I think, as well as anywhere else right now, young people with money, young professionals, right? The business scene in Charlotte's growing. There's a lot of people with some cash,
Lots and lots and lots of cash.
Do you think, okay, so they just get out of college and they get this great job and they have, this income and all that. But without the experience or the desire for the experience, right? Of an excellent dining experience, right? Where emotions get, swept into it. And cause I'm like, that's me, right? Like I'm the romantic chef. I'm the one that's like, I'm out for the feeling. I want to make people happy through food. I want to give them an experience.
Yep.
And that's what excites me. And like the money is like great or whatever, like the profit margins and all that's important. It's part of the science of what we do. But the experience is what I'm after. And I'm concerned that the people that are our guests now, more and more, don't know what those experiences are like. They haven't experienced them before. They've never been touched through, through a plate of food, or they don't have a food memory to draw from, like a well of food memories where they're like, oh man, this is the thing I was looking for, right? And it's kind of sad because I see, and I'm kind of going back to this whole like critique culture thing where it's like, oh, it looks great, trendy spot, it's a popularity contest. What about that, emotional connection to the experience? Do you think that that's still out there? Do you think people are going to get there? What are your thoughts on that?
To me, a huge piece of that is the idea that you connect with people through the food they grew up eating, right? Mm-hmm. The restaurant industry in general has not taken care of small mom and pop restaurants that are bringing the food they grew up with, no matter where they came from or where they grew up, to diners. We don't make it possible for them to survive. And I say we, meaning the dining public as well.
Right.
But one of the things you mentioned wanting to talk about is, is the government doing enough for that? They're sure doing enough for big chain restaurants like Golden Corral.
Yes, they are.
Are they helping these? No.
Right.
This is not happening.
Yep.
And and we'll talk about that, but before that gets away, I mean, I say burn it all down. Mm-hmm. Burn it all down because it does not work this way. Mm-hmm. The people who were at risk during the pandemic, who are at risk during the pandemic, and you all have done some yeoman's work on that, and there are a handful of places that are trying to fix this. I am with. Have you read Tunde Y? I think it's Wey. He is Nigerian. He immigrated here from Nigeria. He is the guy, you may have heard of him, who has done a lot of activism. Tunde. Brett Martin wrote about a piece about him for GQ. And Helen Schwab from the New Yorker wrote about him. He is the guy who did things like served hot chicken in Nashville and charged. It was free for people of color, and for white people it was $100 a piece.
Oh, that's amazing.
$1,000 for 4 pieces. And if you wanted a whole chicken, you had to sign over a deed to a piece of property. Because what he's trying to do is call attention to the disparity, the wealth gaps.
Yep.
How we respect or disrespect people whose food we are co-opting.
Yep.
And I think that's hard to fix from the inside. That's hard to fix when profit margin is on your radar at all.
Yep.
I think it's not hard to fix if emotion is what you care about.
Right.
If emotion is what we care about, we make sure that little restaurant, Lang Van is actually a pretty good example where where the community went, oh my God, we need to take care of this place somehow.
Yep.
That, one would hope, the restaurant industry would think about restaurants like that, because that is how you breed and bring up young people in the way that they should go.
Right.
You let them share the food of their neighbors, their actual community neighbors. In Charlotte, we have an amazing diversity of cuisine now that most people have never tried or ventured into. And that's for lots of good reasons. They're frightened about food. They don't know what it is. But those investments, rather than trying to fix it at the top end, I mean, I just don't think there's a way to fix it up there.
I agree.
Rich young white people are not where we need to, and what they're able to spend right now is not the way to, I don't think, the way to truly, deeply, meaningfully fix how we think about food in this country and how we treat our restaurants in this country.
In what way do you think would be most influential in fixing how we think about food? Where would the vision need to go, in your opinion, to help with that? Because I mean, I know that we'll circle back to this. Maybe if you started to think about it.
Sure.
But you mentioned. I love that cultural work, right, that he's doing. It's amazing because it's shining a light on this kind of like part of the issue. And I think something that happened for us during the pandemic, when all our restaurants were closed, Patrick, Alejandro, and myself, we all moved into a house together with our families down on IOP because nobody was vacationing. Right. So we got this like killer beach house for nothing.
That's
right?
What we did.
And we got a year lease on it, and we hunkered down.
We did not do that.
So we got a year lease on it, and we all moved into this house, and we said, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to survive this, right? And so that was crazy in itself. Doing that, we learned a lot about each other, a lot of respect for each other.
That's great.
But we also got, we were together all the time, so lots of ideas. Charleston opened a little bit earlier than Charlotte, so we had a reason to be there and kind of figure out how we were going to navigate this. But one of the things that we realized through all this is that the way we were doing business before, like we had to lay off like all of our staff at one point, right? Which was heartbreaking for us. No boss ever wants to be responsible for taking away the livelihood of their people, right? And that affected us like pretty personally. Then we started looking at like our line cooks and our prep cooks and all these guys who were making $12 an hour or whatever, which to me, like I had not even realized, because I was a part of that, right? Sure. Like I was always underpaid. I was always undervalued.
Absolutely.
I would have worked for nothing to work for some of the people I worked for, right? And so it just never really.
But you could do that.
I could do it.
So, which is, again, what we're all trying to break it down on privilege, and what is privilege and what does that look like, and the ability to do things that other people don't have a prayer of ever being able to do that.
Right.
But I hear you, and I think restaurant. So pick up where you were.
Yeah. So so that kind of triggered something for us where we realized, okay, so we started doing some research on the livable wage and what is a living wage in the U.S., right? And we're like, wow, I think the average for the country is like $25 an hour or something like that. I don't know about my numbers,
around there.
Which is way more than we were paying any of our back of the house people.
Yep.
And so, the idea that basically we employed my whole team as the chef, like my entire team is being paid under the poverty line, was like just mind blowing. Like I had no idea.
Yes.
Just because we were able to survive doesn't mean that it was a quality of life, right?
And not sustainable.
As
the pandemic will show us for years, because
right.
a lot of people are not coming back to this line of work.
I think we've just scratched the surface on
that is right.
how this is going to pan out.
Mm-hmm.
So that got us to thinking, okay, we need to change what we're doing. And I think Pat got like inspired to, and he's a brilliant guy. So like he started like putting the pieces together and like, how are we going to get there? Yeah. Like we can't reopen and do things the same way we were doing, or we're perpetuating the problem, right? It's that responsibility to the industry to find a better way. Yes. We don't have all the answers, but we have some good ones. And that's what stemmed that whole tip the kitchen thing. And, we raised, for us, we're like, okay, minimum wage in our company is $15 an hour. Yeah. We're still not there yet. We got to get them more. We got to find a way to get them, and where our front of the house people are they're making $60,000 to $100,000 a year, depending on how good they are and how much they work. And our back of the house guys are making $22,000, like, can't get their school supplies for their kids. Like
super big problem.
Right. And so that's where all this came from. And so companies, restaurants, chefs need to get involved in this.
They do.
Because people are obsessed with chefs.
The star power can drive change.
Right.
It can. But I will say it needs to be more fundamental than that. It can't be, 5 guys in Charlotte are going to do the right thing and everybody else goes on.
Right.
We need healthcare in this country. We need living wage in this country. And it's got to be systemic, and it's got to be for everyone to make this lifestyle and this choice of employment an actual viable choice. And you can't, and I applaud your efforts, and I applaud the efforts of others, until we mandate that you cannot screw people over by paying them $6 an hour, $12 an hour, $15 an hour, where they can't live anywhere close to where they work, where they can't afford to have a car, where they can't afford housing. We've got to fix these housing and healthcare issues. And again, you can try to fix it from the inside. I think, some of what this guy, Tunde, is doing is trying to create retail ways of dealing with this. So he's going to sell, and this was a while ago, and I didn't research to see if he's actually done it. He was going to sell a certain kind of salt and then plow the profits of that back into the community. He was New Orleans based at this time. We just need more fundamental change than that. That's great, and it'll help.
Right.
But
well, I think you're right. I think a lot of it is, and part of why I said, like, chefs need to get involved, because in the food industry, they're the ones that people look at because of Instagram, because of Top Chef and all that. And people are obsessed with it. Like, I can't, it's mind blowing to me. Like, my girlfriend and I will be at the grocery store, right? We're like doing the thing. And people will they'll recognize me, and they'll be like, yeah, that's the chef from Top Chef. And they'll come over and they'll be eyeballing our basket,
right? And
seeing what we're doing. I'm like,
that's nerve-wracking.
I can't believe that people are like, they want to know what frozen pizza we eat.
Yeah, you're not exactly under the radar though, Jamie.
No, I'm not.
There's just
I stick out.
It's really, if you want to be on the demo, you're going to have to work a little bit harder.
Right. Yeah. Put on disguises.
But it is. I hear you on people are obsessed. I think, again, that is, can you politically drive those people to support?
Can you?
Can you do the kind of activism that it will require? And I think you guys calling attention, I know Patrick calling attention to stuff, that makes a difference. It makes a little bit of a difference. Can you pressure your peers? Can he pressure his peers? Can we be talking about this? Can you as a star be talking about this in other avenues so that people who are excited about Five Church start getting it. Just
Right.
start
talking to their friends and get
about,
some momentum.
hey, you know what? We're not gonna can we get rid of tipping for God's sake? For God's sake, can we get rid of tipping?
What's the answer for that? That's a good.
Charge people what it costs. And I hear you.
I don't know,
I hear
Helen.
you. And the reality of, we don't want to pay for groceries what they actually cost, right? So we are not a country that really cares about food. We care about performance.
Yeah.
And we care, and that's not Charlotte. I'm not talking about Charlotte in that. I'm talking about the larger issues of what do we really believe restaurants to be, and we believe it to be theater, and we treat it like theater.
Right.
And so when the pandemic happened, that all just went away. And it was the same for most people with restaurants. It's just like, nope, that just all went away.
I am hopeful, and for me, I'd like to kind of get back, and La Belle Helene is a perfect example of this for me, is like, I want to get back to the restaurant at its like original function, right? Which was to restore people, right? To take care of them, that idea of a restaurant. I don't want it to be theater. I've done the theater part of it. It was fun, whatever, but it's not real cooking, and there's no connection there. It's just show. And I think that the real value in restaurants, as it relates to kind of our society as a whole, is like, we got to get back to that taking care of people aspect of it.
But people need to.
They need to appreciate that.
They need to want it.
Yeah.
And do people want it?
I think, I don't know. I think they do.
We know that they want to take their dogs and babies to breweries.
Yeah, totally.
They want that.
Right.
Right? But that is, I would argue that is restorative for people, that there is a sense of, I think that's probably the closest to that mindset that demographic has. I need
it's the
to
evolution
chill out.
of their.
I'm gonna go and do that. But how do you make good food a part of that? The hue and cry when Price's Chicken Coop closed. I really wanted to ask everyone who was sobbing on Instagram, when was the last time you were there?
Yeah.
Just as with any closure.
Right.
People who would call me crying about places that closed, and I would say, when were you there? Well, like 2 years ago. And it was just for my birthday. And,
right.
Okay. Well,
yeah. It's like, well,
no
you have to find a new spot.
Right. People need to realize what it's worth to them, and if it's not worth it to them, should we have it?
Right.
This is the question with the arts as well.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting.
We need to earn it.
Yep.
We need to pay for it.
We do.
And my goal would be, hope would be that restaurants would say, this is what we can do.
Right.
This is what it'll cost.
So I think part of the issue that I have, I'm going to go back to the tipping thing, right? Is because we're skipping around a lot of things that I think are important. And one of them is it important enough to people for them to spend their money on it? Right?
Absolutely.
I would argue that the restaurant experience is, because it's all that I do.
Sure.
And it touches me on a daily basis, whether I'm eating at a place or whether I'm cooking for somebody. It satisfies something for me, is why I do it.
Right.
I do it because I take care of people. I get satisfaction through cooking for people and giving them an experience. Now, flip that. Is it valuable enough to somebody, the experience, to pay for it? How much are they willing to pay for it? And I think that's the tricky thing about the tip problem is, if we get rid of tips, then we, the owners, restaurant managers, owners, and chefs, have to charge a lot more to staff and to give them the experience that we want, that we think that they should have. And I think then you end up costing people out of the experience. Now it's an experience only for...
Okay, so let me ask you here. I hear that. But this is why that's bullshit.
Okay.
What you have right now is what people will pay for.
Okay.
What you have in this town, right? We can agree on that. Economically,
Yep.
What we have right now is what people will pay for.
Are willing to pay for.
So if you don't spend money on the lease to be uptown, and you don't spend decor money, like, where the priorities shift, right? it's not that you can't afford to do exactly what you're saying and have a much smaller clientele and have a much smaller restaurant. It's that you choose, and this is not a bad thing,
Right.
but you choose to have an upscale, uptown, and I hear you on the not fine dining, and I'm not trying to tar you with that word, but because, and I remember when y'all first opened, it was, super buzzy, really smart marketing, the place to be, and you got what you went for, and you have what you're going for. So,
right.
If you feel differently about that.
Well, no, I think
it's not I don't think it's possible to take what you have and then sort of try to adjust it and keep everybody
right.
and keep all of it.
Sure.
Because I don't think that can happen. So what change do you want to make? And then what does that look like? And there are absolutely, I will give you all day long, people will freak out if you say we don't tip anymore and that steak's going to cost you $63.
Totally.
They
63.
will freak out. I'm saying
93.
I'm going with the downscale thing, or the downscale thing.
Yeah.
Or what Supperland costs now.
Right.
It's that we're caught up in what we have now.
Right.
Which is why I say burn it all down, because I don't know that we can get there from here.
Right. And I think, I think the change that we did do is that we added the tip the kitchen thing, which
Will that last?
I think, yeah, for us it will. Well, I mean,
do you think customers will keep that going?
I think so.
I will be so interested. I'm going to call you. I'm
Yeah.
going to put in my phone. Call Jamie in 18
please,
months.
Please do. We are actively pushing. I believe in the current state of affairs, what we're able to do, because at the end of the day, like, let's be real, this is a business.
Sure.
I'm an owner now.
Absolutely.
I'm not just a chef. Like, if I'm going to have great talent working for me and, we need to be busy, and I also need to turn a profit because that's how I get paid.
Absolutely.
I'm not.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm not. All of that is true.
Right.
And I give you all of that.
Yeah. And so, one of the reasons that we really like this tip the kitchen model is that we don't have to charge people more. We don't have to say, hey, our experience is too expensive for you.
Right.
You can't come here. All of my restaurants, regardless of which ones they are available to everyone. Okay? And not everyone, most people. Okay? You can go to any of our restaurants and you can have an experience for $20 a person, which is moderate, right? Or you can have a blowout extravaganza of a meal where you're spending $150 a person, depending on what you drink and what you order, right? We have burgers on all of our menus. It's attainable, I think. So we're not having to price that burger at $32 to be able to factor in tipping and all this, and a livable wage for our staff. Now, we increased all of our minimum wages, and we're asking our guests, right, that if they have an exceptional experience, it says it right on our menu. It says, hey, if you have an experience where the food is exceptional and it's really special, we urge you to share with the kitchen, right? Your regular tip line's there. And then we explain, this is how it works. Nobody's asking you to tip the kitchen. We're just saying it's there for you if you feel it's worthy, right? And I think that's the key, is the choice.
Right.
We're giving people the choice to be involved and help.
People love a choice. People love a choice, and I'm all about that. And I applaud this effort. Is it going to fix the industry?
I hope so. That might be wishful thinking, but I hope so.
Jamie. It's not going to. Not just because it lets people not understand what things actually cost. That's job one. People don't understand what things actually cost.
Yep. And
they're so accustomed to being able to get things for less that's exactly what they want to pay, and they think you're screwing them if you charge them more.
Right.
So that's broken.
Yep.
That is broken. People think you can buy strawberries for $4 a pint
right.
that taste good, and you can't.
Yeah, no.
But you can
get strawberries.
You can get strawberries all year long.
Yeah.
That's broken.
They don't taste good.
That is broken about food. That is broken in America in the United States about what we believe about food. And that brokenness is not going to get fixed any other way than to start teaching people what things really cost. And I believe that we've got to also teach people what the people who are working in food service jobs actually cost.
Yep.
And what they cost to live a life is
Right.
way the hell more than what we're paying them.
Right, totally.
And if we continue to ask people out of the goodness of their hearts to tip, I mean, the reality is sometimes it's not the kitchen's fault if something is not exceptional.
Right.
Just as why should the wait staff, the server in the front, get the big tip if the steak was exceptional because somebody else, I mean,
Sure.
That tipping leaves power in the hands of the people who already have all the power. And we got to get it out of their hands.
Yeah, totally.
So, and I think for a lot of people that model just would be unacceptable. They would never want to do that. I mean, I've had animated conversations about, I love tipping. It's how I, and there's a whole lot there with people you want to talk about people with small lives that I'm going to take it out on you, how my day was.
Totally.
But I think there is a whole generation of people who are ready to understand things in ways that they don't understand them now.
I totally agree with that.
And it is really important for us to start. I mean, we're way late. We're way late. And I think that has a lot to do with, I mean, it's impossible to untangle systemic racism from all of this. It is systemic that we think people are less than and these jobs are less than. Runners and bussers have less than people doing, it's unconscionable. So it's interesting to think about what can you do to fix it and what are the incremental steps. I think there are. And I think what you're doing, again, I applaud it, not just because of what you've been able to do. And I've read, Patrick has posted, I think, some of what you've been able
all
to
of
do,
it.
which is
He
great.
posts all of it.
I think that is great for what you've been able to do, far greater for bringing it up in front of people, starting to bring it up in front of people.
Right. And that may be the most important part of it, right?
It is absolutely the most important part of it.
For us, I think, obviously it's taking care of our employees, right? The people that that's where it stemmed from. We're like, these are our people, right? These are the people that rely on us and we've let them down, by not, not being able to handle this pandemic or whatever.
Yes. But it's all of us. It's everyone who's ever eaten at your restaurant also are complicit in perpetuating this non-functional industry.
Totally. And so that's it, right? So the first step is let's start,
teach people.
Let's start the change. And I think, going to the, I think this is part of the solution. It may not be the solution. It probably won't be. There's going to be iterations of this. There's going to stem different conversations that hopefully will change things over time. But it's definitely evening the playing field for our employees in a way where, the pride that I'm getting out of it is seeing that our dishwashers can buy a car. Yeah. They don't need to take public transportation anymore. They can now drop their kids off at school instead of having to put them on the bus. That's a huge thing. I'm like, okay, whether it's right for everybody or not, it's working for us. Right. And that's what matters to me. Right.
Well, and I think every time you have a conversation or are open to having a conversation, so many of the people who are dining, the most coveted customers, those customers with the most disposable income, it's just never crossed a lot of these people's minds.
No. Yeah.
That somebody who's in the back can't get their kid.
Yep.
So bring
That's
that up.
a great
bring
point.
it up all the time. Bring it up all the time.
Yeah, we've had a lot of people respond to either Pat's Twitter feed or one of our posts on social media, because we're doing a lot of just getting this out there, all the information and stuff. Right. People responding saying I didn't even realize that the tips weren't split already.
Right.
People don't even know how the tip thing works.
They don't.
Yeah.
They don't.
So I think there's a lot of work to be done on this and to figure it out.
There is. And kudos to everyone talking about it.
Yeah.
It's, Leah and Louise, I think, instituted at 23%.
Yep.
That's fantastic. And people need to also talk about, this restaurant, what is it, the RRF, restaurant, the federal government's $28.6 billion
relief.
Relief. not resistance.
Yeah.
I wish it were resistance.
Yeah.
The notion of, I mean, people read that headline and they read, Charlotte Ledger this morning listed all the Charlotte restaurants that are getting money, which is fantastic.
Mm-hmm. All
the Charlotte restaurants, and other organizations, because it's not going to just restaurants.
Right.
It's, people need to see that where this money is going to is, like we said before, there's, not that there's anything wrong with that. Franchises that are franchisees of Gold Corral and franchisees of, I mean, it's not going to Lang Van and it's not going to little tiny places. And I worry so much that people think, okay, well, that's done. Glad we fixed that little problem. And it's billions of dollars. I'm sure it'll be fine. That would barely even, well, I shouldn't do the math, but there's no way the money Charlotte's getting helps.
Yeah.
You know, was it 66 places that got the money and we have 3,700 restaurants? I mean,
right. That's such a small percentage of the whole. Yeah. It's I think a lot more needs to be done. And I think the
only way to do that is to make these jobs workable.
Yeah. And the Independent Restaurant Coalition, I think that was something that was started by Tom and a bunch of other restaurateurs and chefs at the start of the pandemic. Has done a great job of getting lobbies. I mean, they've dumped a lot of money into it to get people on the Hill to be like, yo, we're talking about millions and millions and millions of voting, Americans that are losing their asses on this thing, and we need to put more money into it.
Yeah.
So that's been super helpful, and I think we've been lucky. I don't know about lucky, but I mean,
you got PPP money, right?
We did get PPP money. We got both rounds. I mean, Pat was, he was obsessed with, like, all over it.
Sure.
I mean, he had those forms filled out, ready to hit send at the exact moment.
Absolutely.
And we had all of our team working on it. I mean, we put all of our resources into trying to secure whatever we could get,
I mean, successful businesses had the resources to do that.
Yeah, I don't have a problem saying, like, we would not have made it, for sure. I mean, when we were at that house in IOP, we were sitting around trying to, okay, what restaurant do we let go of first? How do we, how's the chips going to fall for us? And so, if that hadn't happened, we would not still be open. So we're thankful for that. And we definitely know that a lot more needs to be. I mean, because it's going to continue. I mean, a lot of places are just reopening now, right? They've secured their funds and waited it out long enough, and now they're reopening. Well, they need support. Like, they need people to go out to eat to them, spend their money. They need support from the government to, like, whether it's, tax credits or tax relief or whatever, because, pretty soon the government's going to be like, pay up.
Yeah.
Well, for what? We haven't done any business in
Well, and people need to be really, we talked about this before, that people need to be really intentional about where they're eating at this time and eat where you want it to be eaten in a couple years, or it's not going to be there anymore.
That's exactly right.
In a way that's true now, in a way that has always been true, but is a little bit truer now.
I think it's very true now.
And the homogenization of restaurants in Charlotte, I would argue, is, we've got more, but I really worry about what we've lost across the range of diversity and the range of those emotional eating experiences that you talked about as the pinnacle of what this business can be and should be, and what you hope for diners. We've lost so much, and we just can't. We're hemorrhaging that. So I have hope. I have a lot of hope, and I think,
I do too. I think it is turning. I think people's awareness is shifting to it.
I hope that's right.
Unfortunately, it took a lot of restaurant closures and people being like, "Oh, my favorite spot is no longer around. My prices, my whatever." Even if they hadn't been to them, to be like, "Oh, this is a real problem."
This is
I need to wake up and
I have zero tolerance for the owner saying, I just can't get anybody to work. Well, hey, how about paying them?
Yep.
Paying them is an idea. How about giving them benefits?
Yeah.
No. Cannot hear that. Cannot hear it.
Yep.
So I think there's lots of ways to go. I think to your point before also about trying to figure out where to go without consistent criticism, I think there are ways to look for information about places and look at their social media feeds, look at their make some calls, for God's sake. No one ever wants to call anywhere. My husband and I, for 30 years, we would find little hole-in-the-wall places. Anthony Bourdain says, and that's a whole topic, but
we'll do another episode.
Show
Yeah.
He says you're never going to get great dining experiences unless you are constantly willing to have terrible ones.
Right.
And I think that is really true. And
Yep.
and I have for years thought, part of my job was to keep people from losing their money on a bad experience. Like that was the highest goal. I'd have a guy from Lincoln call me up and say, I have saved $60 and I want to take my wife of 20 years out to dinner. Where should I go? And it's like my highest function was to tell him somewhere really good.
Yeah. I want you to have a great experience.
Right. I want you to have it great.
Yeah.
And for all that money that you saved and the things you didn't have, I want you to have the great thing.
Right.
The notion that people will look at a place and be worried about it or not try it, particularly if it's a cuisine they don't know, just walk in there.
Yeah.
For decades, we never had a single, in terms of welcome, a single bad experience. People are just excited to share their food with you.
Right.
Do that, because that will inform and make your cooking better. The more wide open diners are who walk in the door of Five Church, the more fun you're able to have.
Sure.
And unless they get that breadth, and they can get a lot of that here.
Yep.
But I'm willing to bet that a lot of more typical guests just have not, as you said, haven't had that breadth. And they can have a lot of it here, but they got to work a little harder than they're working now.
Yeah. I hear you. They do. They need to do a little research. They got to look around.
And eat places.
Yeah, you got to go out.
You gotta just walk in, get takeout, do whatever it takes. But try the Cuban sandwich you've never had, or try we just have so much.
Okay, so let's talk about some of your favorite places to eat of all time. One, I want to know your best restaurant experience in Charlotte. Two, I want to know what your go-to spots are. Like your top 3. Helen Schwab. I need something. I need some food. This is the spot that I go to. This is who I call for takeout. This is where I go. It doesn't have to be special occasion. It can just be, this is the thing that you crave.
I can do some of that.
Okay.
I can do some of that.
Okay.
So all this information is a year and change old, because I am not going
You haven't been out.
yet. I have not gone anywhere yet. We have gotten takeout. Took me a while to get takeout. We had a whole protocol at home.
Yeah.
My daughters are like, okay, we're going to do this the extreme way, aren't we? And I'm like, yes, we are.
The food has to go through quarantine before it comes into that.
I'm telling you what, I cannot even.
Oh, yeah.
At the very beginning, it was like some psychotic stuff.
We were sanitizing
happening.
the bags.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. We did like Instacart. I'm going to owe for the rest of my life. So places that I love and are consistent. If I have to pick one thing, it's sushi. Like at the end of every day, it's always, if there's one thing that always sounds good. And
okay, and what about sushi? Is it tuna, salmon?
Yes, all of it.
All of it. Any raw fish?
Pretty much. I'm trying to think if there's something I don't like. I can't think of anything I don't like.
Okay, so sushi as like just a whole.
Just as a whole, and I think it's just the purity of it, I guess. That's always been the refreshing go-to for me.
Yeah,
that's just always
clean.
It makes everything better. Just
nice.
Everything is better now.
Okay, so the next one is well, I want to know your top experience of all time.
Yeah,
okay,
and
it can be, and it doesn't have to be Charlotte. It can be anywhere. It could be a trip. It could be whatever. But that leads me into another question, which is, how has your experience as the restaurant critic affected your ability to have a genuine
that's a great question.
Culinary experience?
That's a great question. So probably best all time for our 20th wedding anniversary. We were in Paris, and a friend had given us this little tiny place called Astier, and it was just the single perfect dinner. And I don't even remember everything we had. Tuna with olives was one thing, and the thing that stuck out, we had both kids with us, and they were probably, I can't do the math, younger. They were younger, much younger then. They're older than that now. They brought out the cheese plate, which was, a 3-foot round of cheeses, and they just set it on your table for about 20 minutes, and you helped yourself, and then they took it to the next table. And my girls were...
That does not happen anymore.
Well, and what my girls said, even then, this would never happen in America.
Oh, no.
Like,
oh, no.
No, ma'am.
Yeah.
It would certainly not. It
Yeah.
was glorious. It was
What
glorious.
kind of restaurant was it?
Little French,
Like
just
bistro, like little
bistro,
neighborhood
only
shop.
people speaking limping French, and it was glorious, just
Awesome.
beautiful. And although I mean, heresy here, I prefer Italy to France if I'm traveling,
Mm-hmm.
and in general over the food scene, I would lean toward Italy. We were in Parma 2 years ago, and that's right up there. Parma's right up there. Just.
So both European. What about Italian? Is your preference? Because I think that might be a preference for me too. Actually, now that you say it,
I think that it is slightly more vibrant to me, more earthy. Which is not to say there's not an abundance of French food that hits those notes, but I think Italy overall, and we've been in a lot of different places, there's just there was a food, the equivalent of a food truck, a food boat up in the this little tiny town called Camogli, and they would bring in the haul and fry it on the boat and hand it to you with a glass of white wine for €8.
yeah.
And it was a cone. It was, oh my God, I weep to think of it now. Food truck prices, it was astonishing. Yeah. So, I think it is that there is a generosity in the food
Mm-hmm.
that I find really attractive.
I have one experience. So I went to France when I was a young cook, when I was working
Mm-hmm.
in New York. I think
For
I
Balud,
was
right?
at this point I was working at Le Cirque. I was at Le Cirque 2000 in the Palace Hotel, and I went to France for a week.
Mm-hmm.
I spent like 3 days in Paris, like a couple days in the south of France on the coast.
Gotta do it.
And I like rented a scooter and scooted over the border into Italy and went to this little town. I think the town was called Ventimiglia or something. It's like this tiny little town.
Yeah.
And I went to the market.
On the coast?
Yeah, on the
Down there?
coast. Yeah, so I was actually staying in like a French exchange teachers condo.
That's great.
Yeah, and so I had like this little condo. So I went to the market in Italy to get some provisions, and I went to the market, and like it was this big kind of like, sheet metal hanger.
Yes.
You could see the water from it. There was another little sheet metal building where the fish was. And we walked through, and it was literally the townspeople, like all the grandmas and ladies and guys, like bring their stuff down from their gardens and sell it at the market and trade and do all this stuff. And I was like, never seen anything like that before. I was like, whoa. I was like, this is intense.
I'm never leaving.
Yeah, I was like, I have like found home.
Yes. Yes.
And like the guy was there making mozzarella, and there was a pasta dude there, and I was like, this is incredible. Like like just the eggplants were out of control. Anyway, so we bought all this stuff. I went over to the fish market, and the fish is like, they're literally dragging the nets up from the boats, emptying it out onto this ice, and people are just picking out what they want. They kill it right there, fillet it, throw it in a piece of paper, hand it to you, and like, here you go. I was like, this is remarkable.
Yes.
So I have an affinity for Italian. Yeah, I was like, Italian, like I need to like dive into this. I think that might be why I followed Andrew Carmelini everywhere. I was like, whoa.
Yes.
I was like, this is incredible.
Yes.
So I could see how like that touched me in a way. We do not have that here.
No.
Although it is better. It's better. Like the market is
better.
The market scene is a lot better now.
And I think when people say that, a friend of mine took us to Ireland, and I had the best strawberries of my life. What a bizarre thing to have in Ireland.
Yeah, who would have thought?
Tiny, and
were they like
sweetest.
wild, like little wild strawberries?
They weren't the little wild ones. We had those in Italy somewhere, and I don't like those, which is, I feel terrible about not liking them. There's something wrong, but I think the notion of having things in season is something that most diners are just not familiar with because we don't have any self-control.
Yeah.
So that's a whole nother
instant
psychological
gratification.
thing
I want it now.
I want it huge. I want that big, strawberry that doesn't taste like anything. And I think that is a piece of how people will start being willing to pay for what food is actually worth.
Right.
What
the quality.
Costs. Yeah. And I think for most people, they just haven't had, most of us have not had it. I certainly didn't have it until I was way older. Any of that experience.
I don't think I had fresh food until I was in my 20s.
Right.
Like seriously,
Mom was not a cook.
I was already committed to cooking before I had really fresh food.
And
I don't think I had an
committed?
heirloom tomato until I worked at Le Cirque in New York.
Yeah.
I was in culinary school.
What made you go to culinary school then?
Well, because I started as a dishwasher, and I fell in love with the high octane, crazy kitchen life.
Oh,
as a young person, I was like, "This is amazing," people were doing drugs, all that Kitchen Confidential shit, that. I was part of that whole scene.
Yep.
And
nothing like it.
Yeah, and so I fell in love with the kitchen culture first, and then in my early 20s, the chef I was working for really started to push me. He's like, "You have a talent for this. You're good at cooking. You may not know what the hell you're doing, and you're kind of a wild person, but you have the skills.
You've got it.
Yeah, you've got the skills, and if you commit to it, you could be great." And I was like, "All right, whatever." Enough of that pushing, and I was like, "Well, I got to do something. I can't be a dishwasher forever. I can't be." So he kind of urged me to go to culinary school, and then it was as I started I just realized I didn't know anything. I was like, wow, I don't know anything about the world. I don't know anything about cooking. I don't know anything about anything.
Right.
And so I started to really explore through food. And that's where.
And what you just said is something that most people don't, or often don't, just coming to the realization that you don't know anything about anything is a place that we are not very comfortable getting to. Right.
Well, yeah.
So that is an epiphany.
And I've gotten I'm more that now than I ever was. Yes. I've realized now. And I think something that's super important, and I like to explore this some more with people, is food to me, exploring the world through food is such a magical thing because it's the same language wherever you go, right?
Yes.
The techniques vary a little bit, but it's all basically the same. I could go to anywhere in the world and do what I do and connect with people. Yes. I don't have to know the language. I have to understand the techniques of cooking and how to feed people.
Exactly.
And I think that can be a door opener for people to kind of have some acceptance, explore in a safe way.
Yes.
You don't have to fly to Italy to have the experience necessarily. You can go to the Matthews Farmers Market and get amazing ingredients and apply it and have the similar experience here.
Yes. And when people are, I can't think of a single other field cultural field in which people are so wanting you to love what they do and are so generous with you, generous with people who don't know.
Right.
Now we can quickly talk about cultural appropriation in cooking and what happens in restaurants when somebody travels, for years in Japan and then comes home and opens a Japanese restaurant and is making money hand over fist. And that is problematic for sure. But the notion of exploring in a safe space, I think culturally not only gets people excited about food. Jonathan Gold, the great LA.
I was going to bring him up when we were talking about the critics. I was like, so here was someone who broke the mold, right?
The best, hands down in every way to me. And what he believed was, I'm introducing my neighbors to each other. And that to me was the goal in restaurant criticism. It is help people see. 2009, we did something, and it's not still up, which breaks my heart. We did across Charlotte in 45 plates, and it was 45 different cuisines in Charlotte in 2009.
Wow.
With video of the owner or the chef or whoever was running, kitchen managers, lots of them had, with a signature dish. And for people to be able to watch the video, to watch someone talk about, this is peri-peri chicken, and it's okay. You'll be okay.
Yeah.
Look, it's just chicken.
It's just food.
It's
just food. Give it a try.
I know it sounds weird, but it's really okay. Yeah. I think that did so much for people being then willing. And I got so many calls about people said, I've driven past that place a million times, and I thought maybe there was Mama G's, and I'm not sure if it's still open, and they had something called Kelewele, which is this beautiful well, anyway, I digress. The notion of seeing the food and then feeling like, okay, so I've seen that woman's face, so I'm going to walk in there and I'm probably going to be okay.
Yeah.
That's
right.
what we just need.
We need more of that.
Lots and lots of that. And that is what Gold did with, poetry on top.
Yep.
But the
yeah,
notion
he was
of
amazing wordsmith. Like his writing was awesome.
Beautiful writing. And also a musician, which of course he was.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, of course. Wearing a hat like that, you have to be a musician. But I would say like that is why I think we need restaurant critics, right? That's why we need that function of like, so Jonathan never wrote, I think, anything negative about that was part of his thing, was like, I'm not out here to like, if I have a bad experience, I don't talk about it. That's how I handle that. He couches it in, yes, he was careful about that versus, Brit critics are kind of the poster children for stamping their feet and trying and being, they're funny as hell, right? There were years where I thought, I just want to go and work for Creative Loafing, or what used to be not Creative Loafing now, what is now QC Nerve, and be hilarious and swear all the time and just be really horrible, right?
Because that is entertaining for sure, but it's not the way to bring along a food culture, and it's not the way to help diners treat people better and explore more. There's nothing helpful about that. It is entertaining to read, and you can teach people some things, but there's nothing wholesome about, and there's nothing that advances or elevates people's expectations or explains chefs back and forth. And it's frustrating to see people take cheap shots. Pretty early on, I had written a review about a place that was not executing very well, and it was a pretty small place, and I was not mean about it, but said, this came out badly, but there were some other things that were great, but it definitely wasn't good. And the owner called me and talked about a child who helped in the restaurant who was dealing with some severe emotional issues, and how a negative review impacted their family so deeply. The child was also impacted. All of which is not to say that you should never write anything negative, but you got to know every time you put fingers to keys, these are people's lives. Yep. And so the Yelp cheap shots, I am not here for that. And it is in no way helpful.
I totally agree with that. And people are so fast to fire those things off too. Like in this current
on one visit. Also.
Yeah. They're like
no one can have. There was another place where the chef had a heart attack in the afternoon, and so he wasn't there, and the kitchen scrambled. Tiny place, and I could have gone one time and written about it. Just was terrible.
So let me ask you this:
a reliable critic goes more than once,
right? And that's a good point. So when you were doing your reviews, like when you were reviewing Five Church, for instance.
Let's just say.
Let's just
pull a place out of the air.
I'm kidding. But did you consider that when you were doing your reviews, when you approached it, was it a checklist? Hey, how does it feel when I walk in? How do they greet me? Or when you were doing it, were you taking the experience, your actual what's going on? What could be? Was that part of your...
Much more of that. So to me, it was always... I had a violent argument with the Boston restaurant critic once who said there is no such thing as a 5-star pizza place. And I said, well, that's just bullshit. Of course there are 5-star pizza places.
Totally there is.
So it is...
I disagree.
To me...
There absolutely is.
What is the restaurant setting out to do? Mm-hmm. What is it leading you to expect in its appearance, in its marketing, in its everything? What is it leading you to expect, and how does it fulfill those expectations? So to me, it's all about what are you trying to do here, and how well does that come through? Are you
executing that?
Right?
Yeah.
There's certainly checklist things. Again, responsible criticism looks at what the place is trying to do. It looks at execution. It considers the possible things that have gone wrong so that a second visit is always required. I remember sitting in the car in front of a place that we had gone that was disastrously horrific. And my children both started to cry and said, "We don't want to go back in there." I said, "Get out of the car. It could be great this time."
Yeah.
And the day you don't think it could be great this time, you need to hang up the fork, because you need to always go in thinking, this could be great.
Right.
This could be wonderful. You look for what does this place's biggest fan love about it? What is the thing that brings those people back? Because that is a segment of your readership, that the people that will love that thing, find that thing, and be sure you mention it.
Right.
Always go more than once. Always pay for everything, no matter what. Always don't let them know who you are. Always, which is not to say I was never recognized, but hardly ever. Once or twice in.
You are super elusive.
Years.
You're hard to figure
out.
Point,
right?
Did you ever do disguises and stuff? No, like hats and like.
I did have a credit card in my dog's name, so I did.
I read that somewhere.
Yeah.
I think. Oh, yeah. Kia did a story, and she mentioned that Charlie.
Yes, Charlie. And I looked at that the other day, and I thought I should have specified that I did not spell the dog's name like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the breeder problem. I would never have done it. You think about what the likely clientele is for this place, and what would they want. You think about, does it work because who cares if I think it works?
Right.
What can I say about it that is descriptive enough for you to decide what you would think about it? That is the service. Yeah. It is not art criticism. It is not, although I think I would argue that many art critics, the best art critics, let you know what you would think. They write in a way that is evocative and that you can think, I really want to see that because of this interesting thing. And that was the goal with, and I think is the continuing goal for restaurant criticism. I love an entertaining kind of, gimmicky kind of thing every once in a while. Like
sure.
Wells will occasionally gimmick it up.
Yeah.
But I think much more I value when he is telling me things that are letting me know I can't wait to go to this place, or I will not darken that door. Thank you very much.
Right.
And that's the goal. And I don't see that.
Yeah.
I used to, when my girls were in middle school, they'd had a career day, and I would go and talk to them. and part of what we would talk about is, and I think Hannah Raskin wrote a How to Be a Yelp Critic book. She's in Charleston.
I'm familiar.
Yeah. Yeah. We can talk about that.
Yeah.
That talked about, be descriptive. If you're talking about French fries, don't say they're amazing. Say, what are they? Thin, skinny, really crisp, salty. Use your words, children. And that's what I want to say to all the people on
tell us why.
Captioning. Yeah.
Like what about it's so amazing?
Yes.
Explain that.
Yes. Yes.
Because I'll tell you right now, my girl likes soggy fries.
Yes.
I don't like soggy fries.
Yes.
I am a crispy fry guy.
Well, and width is so important.
Where's the why? Like, give me the why.
Exactly.
Like, if you're like, these fries are amazing because they're super soggy and they absorb all the whatever, I'm going to be like,
duck fat, baby, duck
good,
fat.
Good for you. Yes. I'm going to go with the Crispies.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
And I will say, and you've saved me $8 for the for the table.
Right.
Yes, that is the whole point.
Yeah. I hate the you ruin my day thing. Like I keep going back to that because we see it all the time. Like, it's blasphemy what they do. It's like, what? It's food.
Yeah.
There's no blasphemy here. Like, we're a restaurant.
Well, and just the notion that you are putting your mental health in the hands of someone who might have taken your fries out of the fryer too soon is just problematic.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that is really crucial on criticism, we talked about how people will not specify when they're being paid. I love when people say, I just write about the places I like, so yeah, I'm paid, but I really like it. So yeah, you still need to tell us you got paid.
Right.
And if you are a responsible critic, you are beholden to no one. You have you liberty.
Yep.
And that is a thing that is really difficult, with a subscription service that can't sustain itself. You are beholden to people.
Yep.
If you're trying to break news, and I did this, news always came second to reviewing, because if I piss somebody off, you're not going to call me and tell me you're about your new menu coming out Friday because Jamie's pissed at me because I didn't like the thing. So, and that was fine. Because the reviewing took precedence. And if they hated me for the rest, there was a place that banned me, which I found really entertaining afterward, because I thought, how exactly would that work?
How did you get banned?
Don't know what I look like.
Yeah. Why did you get banned? I know Hannah's been banned a few times. And we actually considered it.
Did you?
Yeah. We can talk about the why. We've actually let it go since then. But anyways, how did that happen for you? I'm curious.
I went for a first bite to a place that is still in existence. And first bite was what I would call, if I went in the first 3 months, it was not a full review, but people were talking about a place and they were asking questions about it. So what do they have? And what was the couple sentence? And we always noted, this is first bite. It's one visit.
Yeah.
It's
this is not my review. This is a little
And they're
taste.
Still working the kinks out, even though one could argue, well, charge half price then if you're working the kinks out. That was a thing for me.
If you're open, you're open.
You're open.
Yeah.
And you're charging full price.
Right.
This is not friends and family. So, but this place was a disaster. And, we'll have your food right out 45 minutes later. There's some issues. We're going to get it out. I'm like, just tell me it's okay.
Yeah.
Just tell me what's going on. No. We'll have it right out. Tacos come out, the cheese is melted. I can't even remember. It was just disastrous.
It wasn't one of my places, was it?
No. And responsible criticism. Yeah. You always call.
Yeah.
And you tell people, I've got a review or I've got a piece coming out. Had a couple questions for you, so they know.
Yep.
Because back in the day, places would get swamped sometimes.
Oh,
and I worried about getting a couple places closed because I had people we had no idea, and people are really pissed because we're sold out of everything. And
we didn't prepare for the
right. So I would always call and talk to somebody.
Yeah.
You always call, and I see now where people will write about places, but they didn't call and talk to anybody. So it's like, this tastes like canned. Well, did you ask them if it is canned? Did you see a can? You can say tastes like canned. Don't tell me it was canned unless you know.
Unless you know.
Fact.
Oh, I've confirmed.
Just all of those kinds of things. But I called and said, this had a couple questions here, and how did it go? Well, it was pretty rough. Yeah, it was kind of rough. The best places always asked how it went. The worst places often did not ask.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty convinced they knew.
Yeah.
What the problem was.
oh.
But I ran it, and he called and just lost his mind. You're banned. I'm like, okay.
Well.
Just,
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm just going to go in tomorrow night because he doesn't know who I am. You can't ban me.
You can't ban me. How will you know?
No way to do it.
Yeah. In the early days, I was trying to think back. I remember when we first opened Five Church and we were preparing for your review. We had been open for a few months, I think 3 months or so. And
DNC, right around the DNC.
Yeah, it was about the DNC. And at that time, Five Church, to me, that was our shot. And I think Patrick felt the same way. I'll speak for him on that. It was like, this was our first ownership gig. Like, we had a lot to prove.
Now, you were coming from Table, right? You had been
I had been working with Bruce at Barrington's.
Okay, that's right. Right.
So I went I was at Blue and Table, and then went to Barrington's for about 3 years with Bruce.
That's right.
Before,
and then I did Five Church, and then did Nan and Byron's, right? For a hot minute, and then I remember.
Yep, that was the lineage there. But okay, so we opened Five Church, and we were like, we came out, we had a pretty big media machine. Like, we were like, we're gonna change the face of we were all about it.
Yes.
And so so we knew that we would be a target for criticism. We knew that you were going to come and give us a review, and I wanted it to be a good review. Coming from my lineage in New York, like where the food critic that is the thing. So I was very like, okay, everything's got to be perfect. I need to know when she's here. We need to all this stuff. And of course, I think we knew maybe did you come 3 times for us or twice?
I think I did.
Because I think the last time we knew, you were there.
Really?
Yeah, I think so.
That's disturbing.
Yeah, I think we did, because somebody said, "Hey, I think Helen's here," and I think I did a round in the kitchen, and I feel like I recognized your table, not you, but somebody who you were with. I was like, I know that person. That's got to be her.
Okay.
You know, like it wasn't you. It was the person you were dining with that I recognized.
Okay.
Anyways,
remind me to tell you a story about that, but keep going.
Okay, so we were anxiously await. Like we were like, okay, everything's got to be perfect, and you gave us a good review. I mean, it wasn't an excellent review, but it was a good review. Like, it wasn't as good as I wanted it to be, but I had a huge ego and a lot to prove and all this stuff, right? Like,
everyone does.
Yeah, and you know, nowadays, like, you know, we're like 6 restaurants deep now. Had a couple open and close.
Sure.
Like, we've been through a lot more experiences where I don't really care.
Yeah.
About the reviews the way that I did,
and it doesn't matter as much now.
Yeah.
So it just doesn't matter as much.
How do you feel about that? Do you think there's a demand for a food critic? Or
well, and you had asked that before,
critic?
And I think that's a great question. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if there were, somebody would have been able to pull it off.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Was it a matter of
it's
business?
Expensive.
Was it
Well, so I think newspapers would have done it. Were newspaper companies in the shape they were in, I think it would have gone on in perpetuity. The problem is that people who unfamiliar with the newspaper business believe, well, that subscribers wanted restaurant reviews. They read them, so couldn't you just ask subscribers to pay you to write restaurant reviews? But advertisers funded what newspapers did.
Right.
They didn't choose any of it, but that's where the money came from. Subscriptions were never the driving dollars. Right. So it doesn't translate. And I remember, do you know the Avett brothers? Mm-hmm. So Joe Kwan is a big food guy, the cello player.
Yeah, yeah.
And I wrote a story about him, and he and I would talk every once in a while, and he said, I'm writing this food blog. And so have you ever seen his food blog? He writes about places they go on tour. I don't know if he's still doing it, but he said, I've been thinking about monetizing it, and what do you think? And I said, so here's the thing. If you take ad money, your credibility is at risk.
Yep.
And you can absolutely tell people, I'm not going to, take any direction from you. And that can be absolutely true. The appearance of credibility, or a lack thereof, the appearance of a conflict of interest, hurts with some people, not with everybody, but it hurts with some people. And you just need to know that.
Yep.
In the newspaper
Are you ready for
business,
that?
Are you ready for that? Will it hurt your feelings? Will you feel like you can't write about certain places? Because what happens typically is the places that want to advertise have something to do with the food industry,
Right.
What the newspaper was able to protect me and other critics from was any conflict of interest.
Right.
I was beholden to no one.
Right.
And that just doesn't exist anymore. I mean, they're doing events with chefs, so we write criticism, but also, they do know who we are. Yeah. And Jonathan Gold was visible, and people knew who he was, and he finally gave up the ruse of staying in the background. But I would argue that there is no substitute for not having someone know who you are.
Sure.
So the quick story was, I got a call from, do you remember the Bayou Kitchen? Or was
Mm-hmm.
So Winston, who owned that, called me and said, okay, were you in here last night? And I said, no. And she said, you weren't? And I said, no. And she said, because there was this woman who was really drunk, and we had to escort her out because also she didn't fit the dress code. And a guy at another booth said, uh-oh, you know who that was? That was Helen Schwab. Yeah. And I had multiple calls of people going, so there was a woman falling down drunk at our bar last night, and the guy said, that's my wife. You know who she is, right? It's Helen Schwab. So people were moving around getting meals comped.
Wow.
I mean, at one point I wrote something that said, it's never going to be me if somebody says that it's me.
Yeah.
And also, don't comp anybody
if they
says
think
that it's
me. It's me.
I mean,
I don't
it's just absurd. So I think often people thought they knew who I was.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's what happened with you.
Oh, no, I don't know.
But I think sometimes that happened. I think the notion that, well, there's nothing they can do about, oh my God, honey, there's a million things you can do about it, right? I mean, you know better than anyone. There's a million things, including running out and getting stuff, which I had happen.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, yes, that is just going to take a couple minutes. We see somebody leaving.
Yeah, you're like, oh, here we go. Comes back with a grocery bag.
Harris Teeter bag.
Yeah, that's
Harris
awesome.
Teeter bag.
That's great.
So, do people want it is the question. And I think people are happy to have it. I think it would be prohibitively expensive to do it the way that we used to be able to do it. Mm-hmm. And the appearance, the conflict of interest or appearance of conflict of interest is so profound for me because I know the pressures that people, you're doing an event with a guy and you're writing about his place. You're just not going to not pull the punch. You are. You can't afford not to.
Right.
So I can't, they don't matter to me because it just can't work for me. So I think you could do it for a select group of people. Could you do it with the frequency you'd want? I mean, the budget that we had was significant. Yeah. And it let me go to places when they first opened. It let me decide not to write about a place if I went. Okay. And something
How
was
often
just
did
horrific.
That happen?
That did not happen often, and it never happened with somewhere corporate because if it didn't go well, it didn't go well.
Right.
But if it was a tiny place, getting its feet under it, and clearly something really disastrous had happened, I would consider it.
Yeah.
I think it maybe happened 2 or 3 times in decades.
Oh, wow. That's not a whole lot.
I mean, it was not a routine thing. Because I also don't think you only choose to write about places that you can embrace wholeheartedly, which pissed people off in my case because it meant you ended up with some, well, this was pretty good, but this was not very good, because that's the reality of most places. Right. This is pretty good and this was not very good. Yeah. They're not all 1 and 4 stars. Yep. But people would prefer that. Right. They like to get a place ripped, or they like it to be perfect. Right. And not much in the middle.
Yep. So what do you I'm going to go back to the question I asked you before. What did I ask you? About the demand. About your experience. So I want to know about your dining experiences now. Like, how has that experience how many restaurants have you dined in as a critic? Like thousands, right?
That's a great question. I actually did the math once, but I have no recollection of what the number was.
Can you ballpark it?
It was, well, I mean,
you're talking about 30 years, right?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be thousands, probably. Because
that's just here. That doesn't include.
Right. And once I reviewed, I hardly ever went back, which was the single saddest thing about the job, because
you couldn't blow your cover. You couldn't blow your cover.
You couldn't blow your cover. And in my real life, I want 5 restaurants that I go to. Yeah. That's all. I need to know what those are, by the way. I do not know.
I need to know what those are.
No. And I won't be able to get in. Yeah. The notion of, jumping all over the place. How do you're not supporting a place then. You're not loving on a place the way the community needs you to if you want those to survive. It hasn't changed. I mean, I think I have little patience for places that are doing basic things badly. I have.
Like what, for instance, what is a basic thing that somebody does badly? Because I totally know where you're coming from, and I absolutely agree.
I mean, I think.
I'm also.
I think. What's the word? Overreaching on menu writing is just really exhausting to me. Yeah. If you no, stop with this. Yeah. And
are you writing haikus or are you writing a menu description?
And I enjoy jargon, and I know a lot of it. Mm-hmm. It's obnoxious because most people don't, and then you're chopping the legs off of people who
Right.
need your help. They
Yeah.
don't need to be shamed,
Right,
or
'cause
to
they
be
don't know
condescended
these,
to,
like,
because they
words
don't-
or whatever.
Plus, they're not going to order it if
Right.
they have to ask, and most of them won't ask.
Yep.
So you're just screwing it up for everybody when
Yep.
you do that. That's really frustrating
Yeah.
to me, and it says something about a chef and an operation. I think if they feel the need to do that, I think lists of ingredients with no sense of how the dish is put together at all, just 6 ingredients. Well, so help me here. Like, is it mostly one of these things? Are they even? Is it cooked? Is it raw?
Yeah.
I don't want 14 sentences.
Right. Just a clue. Just to give me a clue.
Just give me a
Like-
sense of what it is so that
Yeah. I have
I know whether
Right.
I want that, because many of these
the
things sound great.
anticipation in an experience
Is
is-
such a huge...
and it only works if you have an idea, or like,
Right.
you have an idea of what's coming, right?
Right.
Like if you're just clueless, it's like, all right, we're just
Okay,
winging
who
it.
knows,
Yeah,
right?
we'll see.
Yes, you don't get
so you
the
gotta give them
pleasure.
like a little crumb to say, hey,
Yes.
this is where we're going with
Yes.
it, and then
Yes. And I
Yeah.
will say, I think a lot of people despise the word deconstructed, but I like the word deconstructed because that gives me a hint of it's not going to be what I think it's going to be.
Right. It's just-
but who knows?
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of fun.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
there's a little frisson there.
right,
I think I have zero patience for places that do not greet people when they walk in the door. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
am perennially amazed at how many places do not acknowledge your presence when you walk in. Just at all.
yeah, Patrick.
And that's
One of
just a-
Patrick's like. I mean,
Oh my
if you
God.
want to send him into a fit of rage faster than anything in the world, don't have somebody at the host stand.
Right?
Right? When somebody comes in, he will like.
It's just not rocket science.
Yeah.
That's just not hard
Right.
to do.
It's hospitality.
On-
You have to greet people when they show up.
Exactly.
Thank you for coming. Not even thank you for coming.
Just hi.
Welcome.
Yes. Hi.
Come on in.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Literally
Yeah.
anything. I don't
Yeah.
care what
Yeah.
it is.
We acknowledge
but don't
you're here.
pretend like I'm not here.
Yeah.
That's my doctor's office. I can do that.
Yeah, right.
Glassware that's not right in somewhere where I'm paying for that,
Okay.
where the expectation
is proper.
the right glassware.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, that just flies all over me. Because it tells me that you aspire to these things and you're charging me for them, but that is a very simple and meaningful thing that you are choosing not to do.
Right.
And don't cheap out on that. That is not the thing to cheap out on, to me. So I think I'm better after all these years I think I typically have a pretty good sense of how it's going to go. When
you sit down,
go in. When I will always look at the website, and I will always look at
You do your research
some
previous.
stuff. I do not look at Yelp. I do not look at TripAdvisor. My husband loves TripAdvisor and will scour that, and I'm like, no, I just can't.
Yeah, can't do it.
I can't.
do
Particularly
you
in
do,
different
do,
cities.
do you do that? Do you do that research on places that you're going just for, just dinner, you and your husband, date night? You do your research and you're like, okay.
I don't get it down to I know what I'm going to order. He will often like these 3 things look really good. Let's go here. I will like something if it's a decent place. I will like a number of things because I like everything.
Right.
So I'm never worried about figuring out whether I'll have something to eat. I often my Achilles heel is I will order something that sounds interesting to me. Mm-hmm. And typically that is a thing that no one orders. And
Yeah.
so typically the
It's
kitchen
out.
does not actually know how to do it.
Yeah.
No, it's
It's
never out.
It's never out.
They're
They
never
just,
out.
They're just not
They
practiced.
Just screwed up.
Yeah.
They just screwed up. And you can tell from the description that whoever wrote the menu or did menu development, this was really good.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be good. So
Right.
I am trying to wean myself from that because it still could be the best thing I've ever had and clearly
Right.
the best thing on the menu because clearly no one's buying this
Right.
and someone's in love with it.
Yeah. So there's got to
My
be
husband's
something
like,
about it.
No, you're not. You know that's not going to be good. Why are you ordering that? I'm like, it could be great.
Yeah. I
though."
got to give it a shot.
Yeah. So, and I have no qualms about having something terrible. Even now when I'm not, I mean, it used to be, I didn't have any qualms about having something terrible because there would be a tiny bit of revenge and I'm going to let 300,000 people know that this was terrible.
Right.
Now I don't let anyone know, but it still doesn't bother me because good for you. Try stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fine.
Yeah.
And clearly ideas that I don't like are much more palatable than poor execution. I have no tolerance for poor execution at all. I just can't. I'm too old.
You've had too many meals to put up with that.
we were doing a review once at a place in South Park, and they came out with the appetizer, and it was late, and the server said, the appetizer was late, so we're going to comp it for you. And I said, oh, well, that's, whatever. And it was terrible. And I said, she said, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Let me take it away. And she said, your entree will be, and it wasn't. Entree was late too. She goes, I'm going to comp that too. And then she said, I'm going to bring you desserts. And then she never brought the desserts. And she came back to the table and said, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm going to comp the whole meal. I'm horrified. And this was the second, and the first had not gone much better than that. And I called and went through, and the manager says, how'd it go? And I said, well, it wasn't, let me just tell you. And I told him, and he went, oh my God.
Yeah.
It was so sad. But you can tell pretty quickly. I mean, you can, right?
Yeah.
But
Oh yeah.
Do you not feel like when you
I know.
walk in pretty quickly?
I know. I mean, I know when I go to a place. Now, the thing is, like, I'm hypercritical of restaurants, because I don't know how not to be.
Sure.
It's really difficult for Corey and I to have a meal that's not work related, right? Like we go out on date night and it's like, oh, we're always like, we're
Scouting.
looking at the vents. Like I notice all the things, like I'm like,
Yes.
they haven't dusted this place. Oh my God. Like
Yes.
because of the operator part of
Sure.
me, it's not even this
Sure.
food stuff. It's just like,
Sure.
I see stuff and I'm like, oh,
Yes.
it drives me
Disgusting.
nuts. Yeah.
Yes. And are you noticing it to notice it, but then you can eat? Or
Yeah.
are you noticing it and then you can't enjoy your
No,
food?
I can't. Well, usually it starts the spiral, where I'm like, okay, now I got to
Yes.
see what's up. But I mean, I'll never leave a spot. Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
Do you ever send anything back?
No,
never
send anything back. And like, cause I can eat any, like, so this is funny. You'll appreciate this. Being the chef, I get to taste everybody's awful, disgusting, rotten stuff right before it goes on the plate. I'm like, this is spoiling. Get rid of it. Like, so I'm eating like gnarly stuff all the time. So like I can handle food that's not good.
Of course.
Like I can be like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like this
Yes.
is, I
Write
know
it
what
off.
happened here.
Yes.
And
That's
yeah, I think
brilliant.
Corey gets more offended than I do about that kind of stuff. She's like, oh, gross or whatever. And I'm just kind of like, ugh,
Whatever.
I'm not going to finish that. Let's
Right.
move on to the next thing,
Right.
know?
Right. I get that.
Yeah. So it's tough to have like a genuine like experience where we're not kind of in restaurant mode.
Do you do that when you're cooking too?
When I'm cooking, what do you mean? Like, can I
If
just
something's
like,
not going well that you're making,
yeah,
do you sit there and go, oh my
Oh,
God, this
yeah.
and this and this and this and
Big
this,
time.
and then you can't. Yeah.
yeah, and like when I
do
cook
much
at
more
home,
of that.
yeah, when I cook at home, it's like very, it's hard for me just to like not do things properly. Like it's so like
Yes.
Corey never asked me just to like whip something up.
Yeah.
Hey, can you just whip something up? So I'm like, okay, because like when I do hot dogs,
be back
I'm
in 3
scoring the
hours.
hot dogs. I'm like, there's like like I don't throw them in like a bubbly water bath.
No.
I'm like searing, you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's kind of like Chef, like the
Yes.
movie Chef with the
Chef-y
grilled
hot dog.
cheese.
Yes.
I'm like, it's got to be the best, like the best hot dog of all time.
Yes.
Or else I don't want it.
Exactly.
like
Exactly.
And if I'm gonna do it, like I'm gonna do it right.
And I had it that one time, that perfect way. So
Yeah.
I am now going to reproduce that one.
Right.
And it's going
That's
to
the
be
one.
3 hours from now
Yeah, exactly.
where we actually have
so
it.
she never asked me to like whip something up.
No,
It's
I
like,
bet she doesn't.
it's like,
She's
okay.
smarter than that.
Yeah.
I get it.
So if we're whipping anything up, she's the one doing the hot
Okay,
dogs.
good. But you can suspend disbelief for her, right?
Oh, well, she's become well, I'll tell you, and she wouldn't mind me saying this. She was not a good cook when
She'll
we first
be the
started
judge of
dating.
that. Okay.
Yeah, no, she was not. She knows she wasn't. I mean, it was like very minimalist, not in a good way,
Yep.
like frozen
Okay.
chicken breast
I gotcha.
in the microwave kind of thing.
I gotcha.
And I think the first thing that I taught her to do, because she's like, hey, I want to cook for you, I want to make dinner, and I was like, oh boy, here we go. And so I taught her to do a roasted chicken, and it's my favorite thing to eat, the simple roasted chicken. And she has surpassed my roasted chicken.
Nice.
I don't know if it's because she makes it, she does it well.
Certainly.
I mean, she cooks it well, and she like thermometers. She's got her whole thing, her whole process is proper, and it's amazing when she does it.
Wonderful.
And so now I know she can do it, and she knows she can do it. Like, so now she holds herself to this standard of like, okay, well, if it's not, chefed
Perfect.
up, then I don't want to do it. So we're kind of have this,
Yes.
but it's good because we eat well.
Yes.
You know, we're not eating a whole lot of frozen chicken breast or, you
Yes.
know.
God forbid.
Yeah. So what are your best dishes? What are your favorite things to cook at home?
Oh, that's a good
And do you
question.
enjoy doing it?
I do for the most part. I am somebody who did not cook the same thing twice for a long, long time because there's so much to cook. Why would I want to do it again?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And so I would hit something that everybody liked, and like they would all go, "Well, we'll never see that again," which is true. So we got good at a lot of not your knife skills that I just refreshed with Padma. With her going, "Oh my God!"
tournaing on the first day.
Beautiful.
Man,
Beautiful
the
stuff.
chefs they busted my balls that day.
Oh.
They're like, this guy pulls out the tournays on the first day, really, and then burns all his vegetables.
Well, you gotta have that, high-low experience. That, yeah.
Oh yeah, that first one was a roller coaster.
Well, my older daughter, who had watched a lot of them, said, "I don't understand how that does not happen to every single person." I said, "Oh, it does."
Oh yeah.
Oh, it does.
It's just selective who.
Absolutely.
Yeah, who gets.
Well, and the notion that there's only the one fryer, so everybody's just gonna have to. I mean, that's just such crap.
Yeah.
I don't enjoy that part.
Yeah,
I don't enjoy that part.
and that was probably the hardest part of the game was that like I'm not a competition chef.
No,
you know what I mean? Like I cook from
no
my
one
heart.
theoretically is.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, there's some
point.
people that are very good at it.
Right.
And
but
I
they're
actually
not.
became good. I became good at the quick fires.
Yeah.
I was not good at them. Obviously, my first episode was a nightmare because I had never cooked that way ever.
Right. I mean, it's so false. Though.
Right.
It's patently false.
Yeah. Unless you've done it over and over again, it's like
And the people
any
who
sort of
did.
sport.
And
Yeah.
the people who did would say, "Oh my God, I forgot."
Yeah.
Like I loved where on the second go round, Tom or somebody says, "So who all said they'd never do this again?" And everyone,
everybody was
yes,
like, yeah.
throws their hand
We
up.
said,
Yeah,
nope.
never want to do this. It's so unrealistic. Like, give us the challenge and then come back Wednesday.
Yeah.
and we'll have
Yeah.
it for you
Yeah.
at 8
Yeah.
o'clock. Like that's
Yeah,
fine.
That's totally fine. That does not happen at all.
Yeah,
You
I'm
know.
not getting it.
I was super thankful that for the All-Stars season, the first challenge was the mise en place. I was like, yes, like because that's my jam. I
Yes.
was like, no problem.
Oh, no,
you know
that
what I
was
mean?
boom.
Yeah, I was like,
Yes.
no, I was like, tournée artichokes. I got
can
you.
See,
Yeah.
Yes, we felt good about where that was
we
going.
walked up to the conservatory and like from where we were standing, Padma and Tom are there, and you could see the station set up like in the distance, and I could see like the ingredients.
You
I
knew.
was like, oh man, I got
Thank
this. I was
God.
like, this is gonna be a great year.
Thank
for me.
God.
Yeah.
Well, now I had never watched that season, so I
Okay.
just watched it. And
Okay.
the thing about where you're grilling over fire for that table of chefs, which for people who haven't watched it, go
Yeah.
watch it. It's on Hulu. It's easy. It's season 17.
Yep.
And just the notion that, I just found that delightful.
Yeah. Well, we were all, when they gave us the challenge, we had the overnight to go shop and then cook the stuff the next morning on the beach. And so we had a little bit of time to figure out what we were going to do. But I mean, we had like Marcus Samuelson. We had
It's Nancy
Jeremiah
Silverton.
Tower, Nancy. Like I was like, these guys, like this is the finale table
It
the
was
first day.
on the
Yeah.
first day.
Yeah,
I
was
mean,
like
I was
crazy.
stunned.
Yeah, and they're like, now you got to go cook on the beach. I was like, what? Like we were all just like,
Yeah.
I was thinking about how do I keep sand out of everything? Like, you know what I mean? I was like, if anybody's ever cooked on a beach, I'm like, there's no way you're
Okay, I did
like,
not
how do
even
you
think
do
of that.
this? Yeah, like
Well,
how do we
one
do
of
this
you-
serve these guys like a mitt full of sand?
I had not even thought about the sand. I did think about people, and then she did it. I can't think of the woman's name who fire wasn't hot enough, so she poured, or no, fish was sticking, so she poured
the oil.
on. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, come on.
Yeah, Was that
Children
Nene,
know
maybe?
not to
might
do
have been
that.
Nene.
I
gotta remember, but
don't
yeah.
remember who. It was just like, I
Yeah.
know not. And then Tom is like,
Yeah.
the carbon on this fish. I'm like, carbon.
Oh,
I
yeah.
enjoy that. Carbon.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was delightful. So, I mean, I do think those things help people who watch see some of the pressure. I think they delude them into thinking, well, I wouldn't have burned the vegetables. All you needed to do was, So I think there is this false sense of, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how people end up modulating their expectations when they see that.
Right. It's I mean, the stuff that they come up with for these challenges is like, it's wild. I mean, it's not meant to be easy, and it's meant to like have
Drama.
snafus and all kinds
drama.
of. So like, if someone actually executes really well, it's a feat, you know. And us, like the Top Chef family, right? Like the chef testants or whatever you call them, like we're all like tight. You know, there's only a handful of people that get to do this kind of thing, and so you know, we know.
Yeah.
You know, when somebody nails it, you're like that's impressive.
Yes.
Like, because for the rest of us, like just getting through the challenge was hard enough. You know, to get something on the plate is tough enough. But to actually do it really well, you're like, wow, okay.
And do you
that takes some chops.
When you see it edited, do you watch them?
Yeah.
Okay. How accurate would you say is the impression given about any particular dish? For example, and here's why I ask. I look at little guy from Alabama who was cooking for the governor, Jim.
I love Jim. We all love Jim. Yeah, everybody loves Jim.
Jim's like the only guy who'd ever heard of Edna Lewis. I'm like, Jim! I know, I got you, Jim. The notion that, I mean, what it seemed like was everybody thought he was nuts. He did the strawberry whatever with the
chicken
that
livers.
Was clearly crazy.
Yeah.
And then he does like three great dishes, and then he gets sent home. And I'm like, what the hell happened? Either those first 3 dishes were not as good as we were led to believe, or we're just kind of capricious about who we send home.
I can't speak to that. Okay. I have some strong feelings about that.
Okay.
But
and you are contractually obligated not to share those feelings.
No, I mean, I don't think I'm under any contract to say it, but like, you know, I think that a lot of it, so it's like critiquing a restaurant. You know, it's like, I think that sometimes on the quick fires, I think that it's how well you execute the challenge. Like, what was the challenge?
Sure.
Like, you could put out a great dish.
Sure.
But did you execute the challenge? Did you use all the pieces? Did you, you know, and then, you know, I think they look at creativity. I think they look at, I mean, I'm sure that they look at performance. You know, how well do you do?
Yes.
How entertaining are you?
Are
you? You know,
sure,
like I didn't realize
the underdog.
Like I didn't realize that I mumble under my breath while I'm cooking like that until like the first episode. They like, you know, they're editing it in. I'm like, oh my God, I was saying all this stuff that I'm not thinking about because I'm just like,
right.
Yeah, you know. And then they put it in. You're like, oh no,
this is what else? I look like?
Yeah, what else did I say? You know what I mean? You have no idea. So I think they look at some of that too, like, you know, how good is this person for the overall thing. And then there's just like some straight up duds where I think their hands are tied. They're like, well, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I find that intriguing. It's interesting though that it's edited to such a point that viewers, and I know this for a fact because as I was rewatching one on the Masters, or as I was watching one of these episodes, my daughter who'd seen it, this chef in the first season, and I can't remember which chef, a woman.
Yep.
In the first season she was in, she's, oh, I don't like her. And I thought, you just walked in. And she goes, oh, I remember her. And I thought, you know, I mean, to edit to personality like that, they're clearly editing to personality. And this person just did not have a nice word to say about anybody, and you just got...
That's all you got.
That's all you got.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I get that is the way you cultivate drama. You know, this is the bad girl, and this is the guy who, you know, whatever. This is the guy who never cooks for anyone except the governor's friends or invitees. But you just think some of the storylines, the woman whose birthday it was and who got bounced, the Italian woman who got bounced on her birthday. It's like,
Sylvia.
What are the chances of, like, we've just
curse,
done the
birthday curse,
and we back up and show the 14? Like, there's no way she's not going home.
Yeah. It's a done deal. I don't have any inside knowledge of that, but it's way too
pat.
To not see it. Cool. Well, I don't have anything else for you. We've been chatting for a while.
All right.
I've got like 2 episodes worth. I'd like to have you as like a repeat guest on my podcast.
That sounds
Thank
great.
you so much.
Yeah.